If you work with containers, or you've heard of them, you'll know one of the main advantages of them is that they're small and they're portable and that you can run your code anywhere. More often than not, container images are based on Linux. Microsoft SQL Server, on the other hand, is a different beast entirely. It's big and it's enterprisey, and it has been known to run on entire fleets of Windows servers. So surely you couldn't get Microsoft SQL Server to run in a container, could you? Well, it turns out you can, and it's actually simpler than you might think. And in this video, I'll show you how to do it. Welcome along, my name is Chris Roberts, this is Roberts Dev Talk. Now in 2018, Microsoft released SQL Server for Linux, and once that cat was out of the bag, then the next logical step was to release a Docker image, and that's exactly what they did. Microsoft now maintain a set of official SQL Server Docker images that you can use to get SQL Server running in a Docker container. And the advantage of this is it's really quite simple to get a development or test environment running locally without installing SQL Express or SQL Development Edition. And on Windows, this is just a convenience thing really. You might not particularly want to install SQL Server on your machine. However, where things get really interesting is if you're using a Mac. Because .NET Core and Entity Framework are now completely cross-platform, you can now have an entire SQL Server, .NET Core, Entity Framework Core development stack running on your Mac without a Windows server in sight. Now there's one prerequisite, and this is that you have Docker Desktop installed. There's a link below to go and get that for the platform of your choice. Other than that, let's get started. So I'm on my Mac, I have Docker Desktop running, and I've got my terminal open. I'm going to use the command docker run, and then we'll use the -d parameter because we want to start our container detached and have it running in the background. Next, we want to be able to connect to our SQL instance from the host, which is the Mac. So I'll bind the 1433 port on the container to my host using -p 1433 1433. Next, we need to configure SQL Server using a couple of environment variables in the container. So first, I'll type -e for environment variable, and then accept EULA, which is end user license agreement, equals y. So this just tells SQL Server as it starts up that we accept his license agreement, and then we need to set -e and the SQL admin password, which is SA password equals, and we'll just set it to password 1. We're very secure here. Now we want to be able to access files on the Mac host from within the container, so I'll mount a volume using -v, and we'll just use our documents SQL mount, and we'll create a volume inside the container called SQL mount. Finally, we'll give the container a name so we don't have to use the long Docker ID when starting it up next time, so we'll just choose Docker SQL. Finally, we'll add the name and tag of the container image that you want to use, which in this case will be mcr.microsoft.com/mssql server, and then the tag is 2019 latest. Now by the time you watch this video, other versions of the image might be available, so do check out the description below to get the latest tags. This is an Ubuntu image, but there are Windows and Red Hat Linux images available as well. And when this command is run, first Docker will check to see if it has this image and tag name stored locally. If it does, it will run a new container from that image. If not, it will pull it from the registry. In this case, I've already pulled it down previously, so when I hit enter, it will just start up the container. And that's it. If I type docker ps, we'll see that our SQL Server container is running happily away in the background. Now I haven't got SQL Server Management Studio, of course, because I'm on a Mac, but I can use Microsoft's cross-platform alternative, Azure Data Studio, to connect to my SQL Server inside the container and check it out. So I've started Azure Data Studio, and I want to connect to the SQL instance running in my container. So I'll click New Connection, and then we're going to leave the connection type as Microsoft SQL Server. We'll set the server to localhost, and then we'll leave the authentication type as SQL login. We'll set the username to SA, which is our default SQL admin username, and then the password to password 1, which is what we set using our SA_password environment variable. We can leave everything else default and click connect. So we've connected to the SQL Server instance running inside our container. We can see that the edition is Developer Edition 64-bit, the version number is 15.0.4102, which is a 2019 SQL Server, and the OS version is Ubuntu 18.04. If we look in our databases, we can see the default system databases that come along with SQL Server. So this is actually SQL Server Developer Edition. It's not watered down in any way, and it's fully compatible with backups taken from on-premise databases and Azure SQL database. Now, I don't use my Mac all the time. My main development environment is Windows. I work with Entity Framework Core and .NET Core, but I don't have SQL Server installed. When I need a SQL Server development environment, I just spin up a Docker container. When I don't need it anymore, I just stop it. So something that I found has made my development workflow much more efficient. Now, there's a link below in the description to all the resources that I've mentioned in this video. If it's been useful to you, please do drop a like, subscribe if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.